One of the things that everybody should realize, and that is probably the single most important factor, is that any startup company that turns into a substantial company over the years never lose track of the fact that there was a lot of luck involved in that. You know, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, there are a lot of people who are very smart, very hardworking. Very few ever have, you know, the planetary alignment that leads to a tiny little company growing into something substantial.
Jeff, welcome to Dallas. I'm excited that you can see what a city that really wants you here looks like, right, guys? Sorry, that was too tempting. So I've left 30 seconds here just in case there's a little real estate deal that you want to anything.
It's very nice to be here.
All right, I tried. Before we get started, I do want to thank the sponsors tonight, Amarillo National Bank and Highland Capital Management. This is a multi-faceted event. We're here with SMU, our great partner. We're here as the Engage event sponsored by Highland Capital, and we're also here as the culminating conversation of our Forum on Leadership. And this has been a great couple of days with Bono, Priscilla Chan, Governors Hickenlooper and Martinez, Ben Bernanke, Hank Paulson, many others, and Condi Rice and President and Mrs. Bush talking about leadership. So I want to talk about leadership.
Yeah.
And the first thing to really talk about is I want to take you back to the beginning. And in 1995, you started.
Yep.
You went public in 97.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll adjust for stock splits, but you raised stock. You issued shares at $1.50 a share.
That's right.
In 1988, your revenue was $600 million, and you lost $125 million, but your stock had gone to $55 a share. So you doubled down. Sales went up threefold. You lost another $400 million, but your stock went up to $76. $27 billion of market cap. Your personal net worth of $9 billion. Take us back to that time where the market is telling you you're doing great, but you have red ink in the company. You took on $2 billion of debt from 99 to 01, while you doubled sales yet again. What were you thinking back then?
Well, that's a great question, and it is kind of fun to go back and think about those days. You know, in those days when we had, I don't know, when I started the company and there was just one person, and then there were 10 people, and you know, today there are almost 600,000 people. So there's a lot of change. But back in that time, we were still a pretty small company by most standards. But we were growing fast, and it was very exciting. You know, when I started, I was driving all the packages to the post office myself. I knew the UPS guy so well that he would let me in even like 5 minutes after closing. So it was, I hoped one day we'd be able to afford a forklift. It was that kind of operation. We were so inefficient with our operations and logistics in those early days when there were just 10 of us that I didn't have packing tables. We were packing on the floor on our hands and knees. And I said to one of the software engineers who was packing alongside me, you know what we should do? We should get knee pads. And he looked at me like I was the dumbest guy he'd ever seen in his life. And he said, Jeff, we should get packing tables. And next day I got packing tables, and it doubled our productivity. And so, but in the era you're talking about, we had gone public, and you're right, on a split adjusted basis, it's $1.50 a share in today's terms. And the market became very quickly a kind of an internet bubble kind of market, and the stock prices went up very, very high. When I raised the initial funding for Amazon, I had to talk to 60 prospective investors to raise $1 million, and I raised $1 million from 22 different investors, $50,000 at a time, and they got 20% of the company for $1 million. And that was in '95. But just 2 or 3 years later, Stanford MBA with no business experience could raise $25 million with a single phone call if they had a internet business plan. So the whole thing in just 2 or 3 years, the excitement really, as we would shortly see when the bubble burst in the year 2000, the hyperbolic excitement about the internet had infected everybody. And I knew that we had I liked our business, and I liked the fundamentals of our business, but I also knew that the stock price was disconnected from what we were doing on a day-to-day basis. And so I was always preaching. We would have all hands meetings, and it was a small number of employees at that time, but probably, let's see, in 97, I think we would have had a few hundred employees. We would have all hands meetings, and I would say, look, we got to remember the great quote from Benjamin Graham that in the short run, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. So don't think about the daily stock price, because it was going up every day. The stock price was going up. And I didn't want, because all the employees had stock options, and I didn't want them counting their success that way. And so I would say, look, when the stock is up 30% in a month, don't feel 30% smarter. Because when it's down 30% in a month, then you're going to have to feel 30% dumber. And it's not going to feel as good.
Right.
And it was good that I kind of laid that groundwork because, sure enough, in the year 2000, the whole thing came tumbling down. I think Amazon
went
stock
back to about $6.
Went down to $6, and that I don't even know if that's on a split-adjusted basis.
Yeah.
I think that's probably that was on a split-adjusted basis probably below $1.
So, and did you ever doubt the business model at that point?
No. So it's very interesting to me because I had all the internal metrics on, how many customers we had and what was going on, and I could see people thought we were losing money because we were selling dollar bills for 90 cents, even though we were very clear that we were not. We had high fixed costs, but we had contribution margin, positive contribution margin. And I just knew that it was a fixed cost business, and as soon as we reached a sufficient scale, we would have a very good business. And so that understanding of the fixed nature of our expenses relative to physical world retail is what led us to have the get big fast strategy. We knew that it would be that our economics would be very much improved if we could have a sufficient scale. So we worked hard on that.
And so at that time, you're preaching the benefits of e-commerce and really disintermediating the business. So fast forward to today, now we have content, we have physical Amazon stores, we have Amazon cashierless stores, which we used to call shoplifting, and then now
it's shoplifting without the jail time.
That's right, and then buying Whole Foods here from a Texas company. So how does that fit together, your vision, and then how do you manage these disparate businesses with different cost structures now?
Yeah, well, and by the way, just finishing up a little on that prior point before I answer that question, and also with the memory of Barbara Bush in all of our minds, I think part of a lot of people in this room are entrepreneurs, started their own businesses, done various things, taken risks of various kinds, and I think one of the precursors, one of the foundational things to being able to take risk is to have had some kind of support from somebody. You have to have some mentors. You have to have somebody who loves you. These are the kind of things that build up and allow you to kind of, jump off into uncharted terrain and do something new because you have a support system of one kind or another. And I certainly did. So for me, I just want to point out that I feel very strongly that I've won a lot of lotteries. Amazon is one of the lotteries that I've won, but I had a big lottery with my parents. My dad is a Cuban immigrant. He came here when he was 16 years old, didn't speak any English. He's a great guy. And my mother had me when she was 17 years old. So she was a pregnant 16-year-old in Albuquerque, New Mexico in high school, which was not cool. And she made it work, and her parents, my grandparents, helped her with that whole thing and made that all work. And if you don't get that kind of support somehow, it doesn't have to be your parents. Sometimes people get lucky, it's a grandparent or it's a friend or a family friend or a teacher. It can be somebody, but you need that. Somebody has to step into your life, and that's a lottery that I suspect a lot of people in this room have also won, just like me.
So the question...
Go, Amazon Go,
and all the
we do so many different things. So this is the question I sometimes get. How can you do so many different things? Why don't you stick to the knitting? The kind of traditional advice would be to stay focused and keep the business simple. And the way I think about this is we actually do stick to one thing. It's just not described. It's not the business itself. We do web services, which is, big enterprises buying compute services from us, and we have our retail business, and we have Amazon Studios, which is making original content, Amazon Go, the things you listed. So, but the cultural thread that runs through all these things is the same. We only have a few principles at Amazon, kind of core values that we go back to over and over again. And if you looked at each of the things that we do, you would see those run straight through everything. So the first one, and by far the most important one, is customer obsession. And we talk about it as customer obsession as opposed to competitor obsession. And I have seen over and over again companies talk about that they're customer focused, but really when I pay close attention to them, I believe they are competitor focused. And that's just a completely different mentality. By the way, competitor focus can work, but I don't think it works in the long run as well as customer focused. For one thing, once you're the leader, if your whole culture is competitor obsessed, it's kind of hard to stay energized and motivated if you're out in front. Whereas customers are always unsatisfied. They're always discontent. They always want more. And so no matter how far you get out there in front of your competitors, you're still behind your customers. So they're always pulling you along. So customer obsession is a deep principle that underlies everything we do. Another one is eagerness to invent. So we love to pioneer. And when we have done, by the way, whenever we have tried to do something in a kind of Me Too fashion, we have failed at it. We need to have something that is differentiated, unique, something that customers are going to like, that we're kind of leading with. So that's another element that works for us. And then another one is long-term thinking. We are willing to take some time and be patient with our business initiatives, and that runs through everything. So a lot of our competitors might have 2 to 3 year kind of time frames, and we might have more of a 5 to 7 year sort of time frame. And then the last one, operational excellence. So literally, how do you have high standards around, identifying defects, fixing defects at the root, all of those kinds of things that lead to what I think also can be in a simpler way just stated as professionalism, that you want to do things right just for the sake of doing them right.